On this AVNation special, we sit down with three manufacturers looking at the state of the audio in the audiovisual industry, where we're going with networking and what our biggest challenges are ahead. All that and more next on this AVNation special.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is an AVNation special, the state of audio. This is an AVNation special. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. What we're doing is we're kind of stepping down this summer, in the summer of COVID and everything. All of us kind of working from home and learning from home. We want to get a sense just after Infocom, honestly, right before we hit the fall, and get a sense of where we're at when it comes to audio, right? Both networking audio and kind of where the industry is headed. We are in the AV industry, after all, and the A of that obviously stands for audio. So with me, talk about that. First of all, Mr. Matt from Rankus Hines. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Mr. Brad Price, he and I have been a couple times together doing webinars. He is from AudNet. Yeah. Welcome, sir.
I'm happy to be here.
And a young man I got to meet the last time I actually went to a trade show in real life, which was at ISC this year. Brian Pickowitz from LEA Audio. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Absolutely. So let's get this off. Matt, let's start with you on this because it's overarching. And I'm also going to ask all three of you this first question, though, but overarching, as we sit here, we're taping this in July, halfway through the year, and quite frankly, I don't know if it's halfway through the crisis that we're in. None of us know that. But what is the state of the audio industry as a whole where we sit right now?
In one word, I would say struggling. Because while some sectors I think are doing okay, others are not. So it just depends on what sector of audio you're in. Clearly, the live and production side of the market is decimated. The installation side has it's certainly contracted, but it remains busy, which is that's a positive. Clearly. So that's the good part of it, but it's not. No one I've spoken to is it at the same levels that it would have been this time last year.
Yeah, certainly. Brad, when it comes to taking a look, both from you AudNet sits in an interesting position between working with the dealers, but also working with the manufacturers. What are you seeing?
Not that dissimilar from what Matt was talking about. We have seen a decline across all sectors to some degree or another. And I would agree with Matt that the live sound part of things has definitely been just delivered a horrible punch with everything being canceled. But we've seen some hopeful signs and some life out there in the install side, especially when it comes to things that actually help facilitate distancing, like conferencing equipment that we're using now. Things in that space are actually looking okay. And there's a lot of interest in what can be done with AV that is not putting a bunch of people in a room. So it's definitely down. It'll take a while for everything to reorganize around some new set of needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, Brad mentions the fact that of us being able to help, honestly, our people, fellow people in societies, socially distance and still do some of these conferences, whether it's using tools like we're using today with Zoom or other ones. How are we able to use kind of our knowledge base of audio to help create a better experience?
Yeah, I mean, to Brad's point, we're seeing quite a bit of conference rooms and installs like that continuing. So using the technology such as our Dante models are actually we've seen a significant increase in our Dante models than our analog models. So seems like people are embracing the technology through this and being able to use it to their advantage to, whether that's potentially to get more business, using the technology to make projects go quicker, if you will. But yeah, how we utilize the technology industry is it's definitely picked up from from an interest standpoint, with all the webinars everybody's doing, and then we'll just see if it continues through July and August.
Matt, we've all kind of talked on various ones of these panels, and there was one we did a couple of weeks ago, looking at the future of the workplace and the future of house of worship and these other places where a year ago large crowds, right? Reka Signs, makes speakers. You guys, house of worship was one of your main verticals. As we move out of this, how are we able to leverage the technologies that we all kind of know, and as most likely a lot of you are developing, to help those verticals that you guys have already been in for years, help them move back in safely?
Yeah, well, it'll all start. All of a sudden, coverage will become even more important because you suddenly have to use more of your space. So all the areas that you kind of said, it's not important to cover back there. All of a sudden, that becomes important because of what will most likely continue is some amount of distancing, and that I think is going to be addressed both inside, and we'll probably see some areas that will add things to the exterior of the building as well, areas that they haven't used in the past, and maybe they canopy or they cover in some way so they can use the side parking lot or the front entry of the building as another way to get the message across. I mean, we've all heard about the kind of the drive-in churches and so on. I think as those start to move inside, there will still be options, or options will start to be thought of about how we can also address crowds on the outside.
Real quickly, Matt, I want to cover two things with you. First of all, I want you to explain, if somebody's kind of just getting into this, what you mean by coverage and making sure that those areas that, again, a year ago, they weren't as concerned with, which today they are concerned with a better amount of coverage, a better plus minus dB.
Yeah, good point. I'm talking about areas where there isn't seating necessarily. So maybe the whole back part of the church, or perhaps even the sides. So maybe where you don't have pews or seating for the worshipers, those may now be places where people choose to either stand or sit or what have you. They start to get utilized. So a lot of times when people are designing churches, or let's say what always made the most sense in the past is you made sure you put the sound on where the folks are going to be, which means it's going to be in the pews. And that's where you're going to concentrate all your efforts. Well, now there's going to be ante rooms that may be utilized. That space between when you come in the door to the first pew, that entire area may be utilized. Sides, open sides of the churches may be utilized as well. There may even be a shift in where the choir sits and how the choir is utilized, in terms of maybe that's now where parishioners or worshipers. I'm sorry, I'm Catholic, so I'm always going to get that vocabulary is always going to sneak in there.
The people in the pews, regardless of what they're called.
There we go. Not to exclude anyone.
Exactly.
So yeah, those are going to be the kinds of things that suddenly, where no one thought of putting sound or coverage, are now going to be considered.
Yeah. All right, Brad. Matt actually brings up a really good point here, and that is pickup of the audio now. Because I'm going to go down the church route for a second. I started in church production when I was 14, so it takes a lot to get out of me. Whether that's the choir, right, or it's the live band, an actual acoustical instrument here. We're going to have to change. The audio technicians, the audio professionals are going to have to change how they produce this music, whether that is the drive-in, right, or if it is a choir, if you are doing what the doctors say and they social distance, how on earth do you create a mic pickup system for 6-foot distancing choir?
It gets really hard. And at this point, you're probably looking at just simply more endpoints to get the job done.
Yeah.
I'm going to need more mics to spread this out in a safe way. I work as a musician when I'm not doing this. And I've now seen a lot of people adopting clever monitoring solutions because when they normally could hear someone just by proximity, now everybody's needing to use their own monitor systems so they can hear clearly what's going on, even in something like an informal jam. So I think we're going to be seeing more of that. We're going to see more use of microphones, and we're seeing a similar thing in other sectors too. There's quite a few places, and the other one that comes to mind, which is similar in this, in terms of the requirement for increased physical scope, is in the higher ed space. Same thing. You've got a lot of people who normally would all congregate together in a lecture hall, just like they would together in a church. And now they can't do that. And so they're similarly faced with a question of trying to get a lot of endpoints, whether they're receiving endpoints, more people able to speak, more people able to be heard, and more reproducing endpoints where people need to hear what's coming from that other room that seems now so far away. So I think in terms of the music production side, we're going to see more and more solutions where people have more separate lines for mics, more separate lines for monitors so that they can hear what they're doing at a safe distance. If you've ever played live music on like a real large stage in front of a lot of people, then you have some idea what this is like, because you can see somebody else playing 20 feet away and really not be able to tell what on earth they're doing unless you've got a good monitoring solution.
Absolutely. Brian, I want to get kind of your sense and also Matt's from the speaker manufacturer's point of view. Are these live drive-in churches, drive-in concerts, drive-in, obviously drive-in movies, but the other places where folks are coming up with creative ways, right, to still do some of the things that we've been doing for years. Is this just sustainable? Is this something that we're going to see for the next year, or is it going to be once they tell us all we can all get back together in one big group, we're going to do that, and that's going to go by the wayside?
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, we've actually worked on a couple house of worship projects where they've expanded their outdoor space, both so they need the amplifiers and the speakers and everything. And they've on the two projects specifically that I'm talking about, they're expecting to do this for years.
Wow.
Right? So instead of investing, in a small little portable PA speaker on stick system that they bring in and out every weekend, they're doing it the fixed install way, the right way. That's two specific projects that I've worked on. I mean, they're investing the money just in the event that it does go on for years, they're prepared. They didn't want to make a short-term investment and then have to make another investment, 6 months, 9 months from now when it just continues on. So, like I said, we've seen a few projects like that already.
All right, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, what Brian just said goes right along with what I was talking about earlier with expanding the outside space. I think that's going to give people more comfort, and when you have, even if things, let's say, go back to normal, that space will still be, you can still utilize that space for overflow and so on. So it's not a wasted investment. And I really think there's going to continue to be, as things open up and as we get more knowledge of this virus, as people feel more comfortable being around other folks, I think the whole drive-in idea of house of worship, for example, or maybe even concerts and so on that are going on, people are going to want to gravitate back to being around other people, even if they're 6 feet apart. That's just our natural state as human beings. Most of us want that social interaction, and one of the reasons that we go to a live show or we attend church. Part of it's the message, but also part of it's being part of the experience and of being there.
Absolutely. Brad, I want to get more into the technical stuff here for a second. As
Sure.
audio moves more and more into the IT infrastructure, obviously something that AVNation knows very, very well about. What is
Really?
the impact? What is the impact going to be on the consultants, designers, everybody down the right? So from designers, consultants, all the way down to the techs. What's going to be the biggest impact on all of those?
Well, it's a continuation of the path we've been on now for quite some time. So increasingly, we find that installers and consultants are comfortable specifying network infrastructure for their projects. And as as social distancing and the continuing virus, conditions go on, then the advantages of networks become a little bit more acute and well defined. If you really need to distribute audio over a wide number of endpoints to a lot of spaces over a lot of distance in order to accommodate everybody, networking makes an incredible ton of sense. And if you're thinking about it from an old analog perspective, you're probably going to go out of your mind trying to figure out how to do that, especially on an ad hoc basis. So I think that this is probably one of the pieces among many that will continue to push the industry towards understanding and using networking, simply because when you lay out what you need to do, you're going to come to the conclusion that there's really no other practical way to do it. If you're really going to try and get a lot of spaces where you can turn them on and off and use them on demand to accommodate spacing, there's nothing close to what you can do with a network to do that. So I think it's going to force the hand of some people who may have been sitting on the fence. It doesn't change quite a few things. Obviously, if someone is specifying items such as references to the acoustics of the room where loudspeakers should be placed, a good choice of microphone for a certain purpose, all that remains the same. We're talking about really understanding how the transport works and what the level of effort and labor it is to get this done, which fortunately in a network situation is usually a lot less than if you're stringing analog cable all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot less labor, a lot less copper too.
I just think
Brian?
it's going to get to a point where it seems almost inevitable, because networking does certain things that are so well suited to this that it just simply becomes the obvious thing at the bottom of your calculations.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, same question. Is what's going to be the impact of this, and is there going to be a time when we don't when we don't pull 70 volt or some other analog system?
Yeah, so to elaborate on Brad's point a little bit, I mean, years and years ago, you would see lots of installs where the audio equipment would be on a separate network, separate from the business network, separate from that. Not just with the COVID thing, but just over the past few years, as people start integrating networked audio devices into corporate, like Fortune 500 company boardrooms, stuff like that, the IT people almost demand that anything networkable stays on their network. So you're no longer really strictly talking to the consultant or strictly talking to the integrator. Now that Fortune 500 company or whatever company's IT team is involved. So that's why, using standard protocols like AVNation does, and us using Amazon Web Services for our cloud and standard off-the-shelf type technologies that IT guys are familiar with, that helps us and gives us one step in and above being able to accommodate, all sorts of audio equipment on their network. So that doesn't specifically answer the exact question, but years ago, the audio network was just pretty much a standalone thing, and now it's becoming more and more prevalent on the main network backbone. So I think you'll just see that to continue, right? Where the IT guy pretty much runs the show.
Yeah, Brad, you're shaking your head yes, so I'll let you go.
Yeah, we're seeing exactly the same thing. It's the migration, like viewed from a high level, would be that when we started doing network audio, it was still separate from IT. So in that sense, something didn't change. The IT people didn't know this was happening because it was all with the AV guys running their own networks to do this. But now they're finally the Venn diagrams are overlapping. And the IT guys are seeing that this is something that's on their network. And if it's going to be on the network at all, then they want to know it. They want to control it. They want to see it. They want to make sure that they have a handle on it. And so that's, Brian's exactly right. It's pushing this into IT, but it definitely started in an AV bubble.
No. Matt, real quickly, because Brian brings up a really good point about, talking to the IT staff and getting on the IT infrastructure. This is something that getting the AV techs, whether it's the engineers or the consultants or what have you, on board with getting on the network. Brad made the point that eventually this will become almost like a no-brainer. It just makes sense to put everything on the network. But getting those old folks that are old. I'm in that group too. So getting those folks who are kind of stuck in their ways, getting them into that. How can manufacturers or organizations like AVNation, how do we help them through education, but also through advocacy, showing them some of the benefits of getting on the network?
Yeah, the main thing there is to be sure that we all are using protocols that are network friendly for the corporate infrastructure. So that takes in things, not only the protocols, but security. I mean, Brian mentioned financial institutions and so on, and I think Brad did as well. But so by having those kinds of things in the type of networking protocols we're using, that makes it a little bit easier, even if the old, dyed-in-the-wool, stuck-in-the-mud audio person that just says, these networks, what good are they? Even if you can hand them information from the manufacturer that says, here's your tick list, here's everything that this does, show this to the IT person, and they won't have any issue with it, then that makes the road a lot easier, because unfortunately, if those of us that are in the audio world and want to remain in the audio world going forward, we're going to have to embrace networks, no matter how much we dislike them or don't want to deal with them or what have you. That's just that's the nature of the beast at this point. So manufacturers can definitely provide more technical information, and it doesn't have to be necessarily understood exactly by the audio person, as long as they can hand them something to the IT folks that they understand that this is a protocol they can safely put on their corporate network.
Yeah, absolutely. In having a conversation with a gentleman who has been in it longer than I have, and we were having this discussion, he made the comment. He said, "Well, audio is not going to go away," and I was like, "Well, no, it's not. You're still going to have endpoints, right? You're still going to have the ability to get my voice into somebody else's headphones, right, or their speaker. It's that transport, right? It's how it gets from point A to point B that we're talking about here, right, Brad? It's just not. We're not coming up with I don't know, an AVIT microphone, right? It's just getting it. I still speak analog, right? I mean, I guess that's the best way to say it.
Right. Yeah. At the end of the day, we've got to wiggle air around. Yeah. And pick up air wiggling around. And so that doesn't change. We just improved our methodologies and our transport, so we're doing a better job. Thomas Edison would be thrilled, because we finally gotten something done.
And so would Tesla, just for the record, but I won't start that.
So no, love those guys. Every time I think of Tesla, I think of David Bowie. Okay.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Very
nice. A movie reference there for you. Yeah. But no, Matt's right. Networking increasingly is just going to become part of the way AV works and accepted as ground floor getting into it. But it takes a while. These things always take a while. There's always going to be a cadre of people who hold on to the old ways, and they will as long as they can. And plus, there's a lot of gear out there that just frankly works. If you had a big analog console and it sounds great and all the pots don't scratch, it's like, yeah, replacing that is expensive. So I think we're seeing in our own business, because of course we're selling stuff to manufacturers to put their products on a network. That's our main bailiwick. But we also sell adapters, and we find those are incredibly popular, which tells us, there's people who have tons and tons of non-network gear, and they're just dying to use it on a network somehow anyway. And so they're doing that. It's a stopgap. It's not as robust as having a complete top to bottom networked product, but hey, it's getting people more and more accustomed to the idea that this is how you get it done.
Absolutely. All right, Brian, I'm going to start with you and go all the way around the horn as we wrap up here. What is either the biggest challenge the industry has, or the biggest opportunity that we have here coming in the next 6 months or a year?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, from my opinion, so I spent a lot of my time in production doing tour sound for my past job. So I mean, my heart's in the live performance side of things, I think the biggest challenge is to get all those people that are, without a job who supported the live industry forever, getting them going again. I mean, I got plenty of friends who I, pray for every night and hoping the best, but they're not in a good position, right? So anything that, we can do to help them out as an industry, that will pay back in the long term whenever they get back at it, right? So that's my little personal opinion, just since I spent so much time in that industry.
No,
that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. Matt, same question. Is what's either our biggest challenge or our greatest opportunity right now?
Well, to kind of broaden what Brian was talking about is our biggest challenge is finding opportunities in today's less crowd-centric experiences. So, and that ranges from everywhere from whether it's live sound or in meeting spaces. We talked a lot about churches, any type of gathering. So finding opportunities where all of our kind of products really thrive, which is in not so much just in one-on-one communication, it's one to many. So while I see that as an absolute challenge for the industry, there will also be opportunities that pop out of that we're probably not even thinking about right now. So some savvy salesperson or tech person is going to come up with, this is how we can handle crowds and still get the same experience. And that's where all of a sudden it's something we all go, wow, why didn't I think of that? And then that's where the opportunity is going to come out of.
Yeah, necessity being the mother of invention.
Yeah.
Brad, you get the last one on this. What's our biggest challenge or chance we've got here?
These are boom times for makers of synthetic crowd noises, because we need them. No, the biggest challenge is it's very similar to what Matt was saying, and that is of finding more places where our products, where networked audio and increasingly now video as well, really have an important role to play. And so we are, like I'm sure everybody here is doing, we are busy scouring the market and looking for those places where sales haven't gone down and where people now have new needs and they're struggling to fill them. And so it's a lot of these areas we've talked about. It's in ways that people can speak to many people effectively. It's in ways to do conferencing that makes some kind of sense. It's in ways to do school, higher ed, classroom teaching and so forth in ways that make sense, both in a hybrid environment and in a completely online environment. There's a lot we could go into there that we don't have time to. But it's a shifting of our focus, because for a long time, I'm sure for many of us here, things like live sound were some of the first low-hanging fruit. That was great stuff to get, and now that is just dried up, and so we're really forced to put our sights in another direction. But that being said, there is a lot of hope, and there is a lot of stuff that we can be doing in those areas, and we're finding a lot of interest in. So we're busy pushing in those directions to see what we can get.
Very good. That'll be a good place to stop. All right, Mr. Matt Suzuki from Reinkus Heinz. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you, and pleasure to be here. And
awesome. How do people get a hold of you or Reinkus Heinz?
Oh, simple. You can go to reinkusheinz.com. My contact information is on there on the website. Contact me about anything that you're interested in, and I will be sure to reach back out to you.
All right, very good. Mr. Brad Price from Audinate. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
And how do people get a hold of you or Audinate?
Well, you can always go to audinate.com. We've got our fabulously recently revised website, which is that's been a fun project. And you can reach me at our usual encoded email. That's right. It's just brad.price@audinate.com.
Yeah, very, very highly technically integrated.
We do that so that people become interchangeable. You see,
I got you. Someday they're going to hire a Price Brad and then just give them.
And that's not really my name. That's just my role. Yeah.
Oh, understood. All right, I got you. Brian Pickowitz from LEA. Thank you, sir.
Yep, thanks for having me. And you can find us at leaprofessional.com or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So LEA Professionals are tagged there. And then if you need to get in touch with me directly, if you go to our website, scroll down, you'll see my contact info. You can call me, email me, whatever. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. So thanks for having me again. Appreciate the time.
All right, very good. Thank you, guys. For us, for AVNation, go by our website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Find programs like this and a host of others. I mentioned the fact that you could see me and Brian hanging out in Amsterdam if you go to our ISE 2020 section. Also coming up, we'll be covering CEDIA, the virtual version of that, and hopefully, cross our fingers, Amsterdam or Barcelona for ISE 2021. So we're all four crossing our fingers. So all that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.